Fest last weekend. The Windsor-Essex Sports Council, Lakeshore Lightning, and Sun Parlor Female Hockey Association, and all the volunteers and players of this 9th Annual International Female Hockey Festival. 50 teams from Ontario, Ohio, and Michigan enjoyed top-notch competition and fun. Thanks for reinforcing the positive image of Windsor as an exemplary host and hockey as our quintessential game.
Member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, I am happy to rise today to highlight the work that's being done to help those with disabilities by the Luso-Canadian Charitable Society. The Luso-Canadian Charitable Society is a community-based organization that supports diverse families and adults that are living with developmental and physical disabilities to reach their full potential. Since 2003, this not-for-profit charitable organization has worked towards providing caregivers and families temporary relief while their loved ones are in a nurturing environment. Currently, Luso has 2 fully operational homes in Toronto and Hamilton and will open their newest location in Mississauga this year. Mr. Speaker, I was honored to be part of their super successful 10th annual fundraising gala this past Saturday. I want to thank all the donors, volunteers, staff members and management for their great work, and my special thanks to Mr. Jack Prezairs, their president, for his leadership and the organizers that put together such a wonderful event. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, years ago, I was a 4-H'er, and I'm celebrating 4-H Canada's Show Your Colours Day as we welcome all the 4-H'ers here today. This amazing organization has helped countless youth learn through hands-on experience to grow as youth leaders. It provides opportunity to learn about agriculture and get involved in your community. Today is also Take Your Child to Work Day, but 4-H Canada gives youth a chance throughout the whole year to experience and explore one of the most important and significant economic drivers and job providers in Canada, agriculture. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the 4-H Canada for the great work that they do in our communities across this great country, and I want to encourage all young people to get involved, learn about agriculture, and show your colors. As the motto says, learn to do by doing. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to remind this House that every day the residents of Aleppo, including 100,000 children, are struggling for their lives amid unimaginable horror. Divided between the Assad regime backed by Russia and Islamic extremist groups, Aleppo is being reduced to rubble. At an emergency hearing yesterday at the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, we heard from the Syrian Civil Defense Force, the White Helmets, that civilians are being targeted and killed indiscriminately. Humanitarian aid, schools, and hospitals are being deliberately targeted and destroyed. Authorities report that fewer than 30 doctors remain in what's left of Aleppo. It is imperative that these actions be investigated for violations of international law, including war crimes and crimes against humanity, and I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs for his hard work on this issue. Canada will never stand silent in the face of the indiscriminate murder of men, women, and children.
Honourable Député de Bourassa.
Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, on January 29, 2014, the member for Papineau made an extraordinary announcement about putting an end to partisanship and patronage in the Senate. On July 7, 2016, the Minister for Democratic Institutions launched the independent appointment process for senators. Over 2,700 Canadians applied to the Advisory Council to fill the 21 vacant seats, and we thank them. Following the recommendations made by the Prime Minister of Canada, I congratulate the new senators who reflect the diversity of our country. One is a Haitian-born Canadian, Dr. Marie-Françoise Mégy. She has a remarkable background. Her appointment to this great institution of Canadian parliamentary democracy is a source of pride to me and to my community of origin. Congratulations.
Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
2016 Canadian Nuclear Laboratories Awards of Excellence. The Torgerson Discovery Award, Tony Kluche, Z. Lang, and Riley McCoy for their work on hydrogen safety in nuclear power plants, and to Yosef Ismail, Dmitry Klokov, Soji Sebastian, and Yi Wang for their work with radiobiological research. The Distinguished Merit Award, Robbie Badewin, Ian Donahue, Thomas Heal, Mitch King, Andrew Kittmer, Kevin Milt, and Terry Schaubel on specialized tooling to access the NPD reactor vault for general inspections. The Distinguished Merit Award, Jeremy Buck, Stephen Ho, Dag Horn, Colin Kramer, and Jay Lee, Brian Lepine on the inspection technique probe design for metal thicknesses in nuclear facilities using a non-contact electromagnetic method. The Distinguished Merit Award, Jason Hill, Patrick Mansfield, and Tyler White for leading the return of the U2 loop to service in NRU, key to CNL's ability to declare itself a full capability technology developer. Canadians can be proud of the advanced state of nuclear science that is being developed in Canada.
Honourable member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, Brampton welcomed the Prime Minister. He announced high-tech jobs in my riding of Brampton South. Amazon opened Canada's first ever Amazon's high-tech robotic distribution center in Brampton. The Prime Minister, provincial, the city partners were together to share the positive news. The facility has already hired over 300 employees and is expected to create more than 700 jobs total. This facility will create jobs, well-paying, good jobs that will help middle-class families in Brampton. Canada is becoming a global center for innovation, and I'm so proud that Amazon decided to grow here and to hire our talented people. I want to thank the Prime Minister for coming to personally give the good news about these jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, I stand today to recognize 4-H Canada, an organization with over 100 years of community engagement, for their contributions to young people across Canada. Mr. Speaker, our government has made historic commitments to youth, from supporting young and growing families to post-secondary education. The value of learning is something I feel very strongly about. I believe in the potential of skilled, engaged, and responsible leadership when taking on challenges locally, nationally, and across the globe. This spirit is foundational to 4-H Canada. When summer camps and science fairs or to job sharing, mentorship, and international exchanges, 4-H Canada is committed to youth empowerment. With a wealth of programs promoting skills development and education, I invite my colleagues to join me in applauding 4-H Canada for their ongoing commitment to Canada's next generation. Mr. Speaker, 4-H Canada is wearing green today. Let's show our colors and do the same. Thank you.
The honourable member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, a former Liberal organizer, Mr. Corriveau, was convicted of money laundering in connection with the ad scam. $7 million in taxpayer dollars were pocketed by Mr. Corriveau over 6 years. He was a close advisor to Jean Chrétien, the former Liberal Prime Minister of Canada. We know that the ad scam was a Liberal scandal, and this is ubiquitous with this party and has been for years. It will continue to be so under the current government. For example, spending $200,000 to refund people on their moving expenses, getting people to pay $1,500 a plate to attend and to have close access to a minister at a dinner, a fundraiser. It's high time the Prime Minister took responsibility and stopped defending the indefensible. It's time for him to be honest towards taxpayers. The honourable member for La Salle, Aymar Verdun.
To welcome some notable visitors to Parliament Hill today. First, I want to salute our Olympians and Paralympians as we celebrate their tremendous achievements at the Rio 2016 Games. In particular, I would like to congratulate Olympian wrestler Dory Yates, a new constituent of La Salle Aymar Verdun, who has made our community very proud. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, earlier today I was delighted to meet with students from Monseigneur Richard High School, a public school in my riding. These students were specially selected to visit Ottawa as part of a program called Profil Odyssée, whose purpose is to encourage high school students to think globally, achieve academic excellence, and volunteer in their community. I was truly impressed by their accomplishments and their civic engagement. And their good questions. Mr. Speaker, if they become our future leaders someday, we'll be in good hands. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, a little less than 2 weeks ago, some female students at Laval University were sexually assaulted in their dorm rooms. Since then, multiple other victims have broken their silence and dared come forward to identify the culprit. I'm touched by the wave of solidarity with all sexual assault victims, a wave that is washing over Quebec, a wave of solidarity but of rage and frustration too at the pernicious rape culture in our society. The Stop Rape Culture movement emerged to fight this trend. It's time we stop worrying about the assaulter's career and persecuting the victim for how she dresses or for her lifestyle choices. It's time the federal government took responsibility and came up with a plan, and fast, to combat violence against women. Because consent is at the heart of healthy relationships, it should be at the heart of our policies too. Because without a yes, it's a no. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. November 11th marked the end of the First World War. Today, it's a time of remembrance and thankfulness for the efforts made to protect our country. And I've been able to see how proud our veterans are, in my role, of their service to their country. And I'm proud to be there to serve them and listen to them. All Canadians at this time of year should think about and remember what they did for our country. And I'd like to recognize a veteran from my riding, Mr. Raoul Fournier, who's 92 years old. He's a proud veteran of the Second World War, and he had trouble getting the care he needs, and this saddens me. Nonetheless, we should all be there on Remembrance Day for our veterans and not let them down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Central.
Mr. Speaker, it's with great pleasure and gratitude that I welcome two special guests to Ottawa. Dr. Huma Hutfar, a retired Concordia University professor, has recently returned home after being detained in Iran. Her story has touched a chord with Canadians and rallied them to action. The grace and strength that Dr. Hutfar has exhibited during her ordeal are inspiring. She is joined today by her niece, Amanda Garamani, who championed her aunt's cause with thoughtful and unrelenting determination. On behalf of Huma and Amanda, I want to take this opportunity to thank our officials, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Prime Minister, and all MPs who raised her case. I also want to thank Italy, Oman, and Switzerland for playing a constructive role in her release. To Huma and Amanda, it's been my honor to get to know you both. Dr. Hutfar, welcome back home.
Yeah.
Questions orales, oral questions, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the nightmare for taxpayers continues. Yesterday, the Prime Minister doubled down on a failed plan. He promised that if he spent billions of dollars, he would create jobs. But not one single new additional full-time job has been created in Canada since he was elected. So, Mr. Speaker, what is he going to say to the thousands of Canadians that are out of work who only see higher taxes?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we actually lowered taxes for the middle class and raised them on the wealthiest 1%, which the members opposite voted against. We know that Canadians need help in terms of support for the middle class, but they also need jobs. That's why our historic investments in infrastructure are going to make a significant difference by upgrading and supporting current infrastructure, by creating new public transit infrastructure, green infrastructure, and social infrastructure. That's going to create opportunities for Canadians now and long into the future. That's what Canadians voted for. That's what we're delivering.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's only been 6 months since his first budget, and the Prime Minister is already back to borrow an extra $32 billion. And he's completely abandoned his plan to balance the budget. He doesn't even pretend to care anymore. He just shrugs his shoulders. But, Mr. Speaker, we know who's going to pay the taxes for all of this spending. It's going to be hard-working Canadian families. When is the Prime Minister going to start showing them some respect?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to taxes for hard-working Canadian families, we lowered them on the middle class so we could raise them on the wealthiest 1%. And the members opposite voted against the measure to lower taxes on 9 million Canadians. So we'll take no lessons on investing in the middle class and building for the future from a government that didn't, from a former government that didn't get it done for 10 long years.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Mr. Speaker, Vegreville is a rural community of only 5,800 people, and just like many parts of Alberta, it's hard hit. Oil and gas jobs are non-existent. A lot of people are worried about their mortgages, but the Prime Minister is making a bad situation worse by shutting down the federal processing immigration centre in this small town. It's going to cost hundreds of jobs. Mr. Speaker, this is devastating the community, but the Prime Minister can do something about it. He can reverse this decision, show some compassion, and leave these jobs in this town.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, over the past months, we have stepped up to historic levels our investments in support of communities across the country, including in Alberta. The fact is, whether it was strengthening the EI system, whether it's making hundreds of millions of dollars of money flow into Alberta to support the important economy there, we know that what Albertans need most is a government that understands that getting resources to market in a sustainable way is something that all Canadians need, that government previously was unable to do.
I know that members have lots of enthusiasm today, but I hope that they'd save that for when we have the athletes come into the chamber. And remember that we are supposed to listen to the other side, even if we don't like what they say. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd point out to the Prime Minister that these people have jobs, and they want to keep them. So we're asking they don't want to die, they want to keep the jobs they have. Mr. Speaker, we now have new bribery charges against one of Kathleen Wynne's top advisors. This is the same person who once held a fundraiser for this Prime Minister. And now we have our Prime Minister and the Cabinet refusing to acknowledge their own ethical violations with their cash-to-access scheme. Mr. Speaker, this is a lesson for the Prime Minister. He can enforce his own ethical guidelines, or he can end up one day like Kathleen Wynne. What's he going to be?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, to reassure and remind Canadians that at the federal level we have some of the toughest rules on fundraising of any level of government across the country, indeed the continent. The fact is there are very strict limits on personal donations and a total ban on union or corporate donations. It's important to draw Canadians into the political process. It's important to go out and meet with them and be accessible as we are to record levels, but it's also important that people be able to donate and support the political parties of their choice. We are respecting all the rules, and indeed we've opened up the level of openness.
It appears that the honourable members for Edmonton Centre and Chilliwack Hope didn't hear what I said, so I remind them they're not to interrupt. So let's listen, please. Let's have a little order in the House. We actually have some teachers here today. Let's show them how we can behave. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem with what the Prime Minister just said is, in fact, he's not following all the rules. He's not following his own rules. He came into office saying that he was going to raise the ethical standard. He brought in his own ethical guidelines for himself and for his ministers, and they're all violating them. So the question again is, will he follow his own rules?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are absolutely following our own rules. We are following all the rules in place. This government is doing more open engagements with Canadians, more listening to Canadians, more connection with stakeholders than any previous government. At the same time, when it comes to political fundraising, we are following all the very important and clear rules around limits on personal donations, on banning corporate and union donations. Canadians need to be reassured that we actually have an extremely strong and robust political fundraising system at the federal level, one that Canadians can be confident in.
Député d'Outremont.
Member for Outremont.
The Prime Minister wrote in the mandate letter of every one of his ministers the following, quote, "You must uphold the highest standards of honesty and impartiality, and this is an obligation that is not fully discharged by simply acting within the law," unquote. What did the Prime Minister mean by that?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of a government that did not do a good job of living up to Canadians' expectations, we know that people needed and wanted a government that was more open, transparent, and mostly accessible. And that's exactly what we've been in terms of pre-budget consultations that the minister has done, in terms of consultations that we've done right across the country and been roundly criticized for talking too much with Canadians, for listening too much to Canadians. We have demonstrated a level of openness and accountability that no government up until us has ever had. That is what we are proud of.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Cash for Access fundraisers do affect the impartiality of his ministers, and yet they keep defending themselves, as the Prime Minister just did, because they're in technical compliance with the law. That's not what he promised.
Cash for Access fundraisers are a form of corruption, and the country is fed up with Liberal corruption. The Prime Minister must choose. Either he claims to be following rules that are more stringent than the law, or he says that he's done nothing wrong because he is in technical compliance with the law. Which is it? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Canadians can rest assured that at the federal level, we have extremely stringent rules with regard to fundraising. And that is something that is important for all Canadians, and we're following those rules because we understand that people have to be able to trust their government, their ministers, and in how our political parties operate. That is why we are always transparent, accountable, and open in our fundraisers. That is what people expect, and that is what we're doing.
The Minister has signalled that he may also break his promise on changing the electoral system. And the reason he gave is because the Liberals won the last election with the current system. That's actually what he said. But I'd like to ask the Prime Minister about his own private town hall on electoral reform. Can he tell everyone here today, amongst those attending, which electoral system got the most support?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as many members in this House know, and indeed people across the country, the Minister and the Parliamentary Secretary for Electoral Reform have been, for democratic institutions, have been out across the country doing many town halls. And I was fortunate enough to drop into a town hall for a few minutes in my riding and encourage people to express themselves. But the report on that consultation, along with all the other consultations done by the Minister and by MPs, will be part of the deliberations coming up.
Honourable Member for Outremont, order.
I know that the Prime Minister has trouble admitting it, but the majority of the participants in his secret town hall preferred proportional representation. The Prime Minister stated over and over that he believes in evidence-based decision-making. Well, 90% of the experts who testified before the Parliamentary Committee proposed, imagine that, proportional representation. So, as concerns electoral reform, will the Prime Minister make a decision based on evidence and facts? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We know very well, Mr. Speaker, that there are a great many perspectives and expert opinions on how we need to reform our electoral system. That is why we have a committee, and that is why we conducted consultations. And I am eager to hear the results of these consultations and debates to determine how we are going to put in place electoral reform that reflects the values and desires of all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, today, the day that our Olympians are visiting, is the only medal we can give to the government is for the poorest, for financial mismanagement. They're doubling and tripling their deficit projections, and there is no return to a balanced budget. Why do they not have a plan to return to a balanced budget, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, the Canadian families who have received the Canada Child Benefit want to give us a gold medal. I'm sure of that, because now they have more money in their pockets. We began with a very important first step. We improved their current situation, and that is how now we can make investments in the future for their children and grandchildren. That is our program that was announced yesterday, and we are putting it into place. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, my former colleague Jim Flaherty was named the best finance minister in the world. I can't wait to see what this minister is going to get. But I think they're going to get a medal for not paying down their deficit. Mr. Speaker, why is there no plan on the part of this government to return to a balanced budget? The Canadians cannot trust this Prime Minister. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we are very proud of yesterday's economic update because we were able to explain to Canadians how we can improve their situation in future with an economic plan to grow the economy. That is very important. We're going to make investments in infrastructure that will help our economy, that will create jobs and more opportunities for young people and for everyone in the future. This is an important plan for the future of our country.
The finance minister is a corporate guy who knows all about return on investment, so maybe he can explain this. He says we need to borrow $26 billion this year to spend on creating jobs. Yet since the borrowing binge began, we've actually lost 6,000 full-time jobs. So if it costs $26 billion to kill 6,000 jobs, how much would it cost to create one?
The Minister of Finance. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians can agree that the challenges that we're facing as a nation require a long-term plan. We started with Budget 2016 making a real and measurable difference for Canadian families, improving their life, improving the lives of their children. We're now moving forward with a long-term plan, one that we're going to execute responsibly by ensuring that we make investments in infrastructure that can improve our economy over the long term and help Canadian families with more jobs in the short term.
I remember for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, what the finance minister doesn't understand is that every dollar he adds to the economy in new spending, he must first subtract through borrowing and taxing it out of the economy in the first place. As Churchill would say of the finance minister, he's like the man who tried to lift himself up and fly by standing in a bucket and pulling up on the handle. In reality, he's pushing down 6,000 jobs down since the borrowing binge began. Mr. Speaker, when will this government stop pushing down on our economy, our workers, and our taxpayers?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we've made a commitment to Canadians that we are actually going to invest in the long term. We're going to make a real difference for the future growth in our economy. Canadians knew that the last decade of low growth meant that we needed to take a different tack, a tack that improves the lives of middle-class Canadians today, a tack that means that we're going to have a better future tomorrow because we're going to make responsible investments that are going to make a real difference for our children and our grandchildren.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the government had a golden opportunity to turn the economy around, to take the bull by the horns, and instead the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance decided to make the situation worse. $32 billion in additional spending over the coming years. Billions of dollars that we are sticking our children and grandchildren with because of their economic mismanagement. I asked the following question 4 times to the Minister yesterday. When are we going to a balanced budget? When can he give me a date for a return to a balanced budget, and I'll give him a gold medal? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I announced our long-term economic plan. This is truly a plan that is going to grow the economy for the future of our country. And we want to be prudent at the same time. That is why our debt to GDP ratio will decline over our mandate. But the important thing for Canadians and the middle class is that we're going to invest in them, in our country, as a country that trusts in its future. Thank you.
This is the worst case scenario. 5 times I asked the Minister, when will we get back to the equilibrium? No answer at all. This is a clear message to Canadians, to hard-working Canadians. Because, Mr. Speaker, when we are not paying our what we have to do, when we're living higher than what we have to own, well, we'll be sending the bill to the children and grandchildren. But it's curious, Mr. Speaker, because we're spending billions of dollars, we can borrow billions of dollars, when we talk to the ordinary Canadian, it's more tough for Canadians to borrow money, to mortgage, thanks to the Minister of Finance. So my question is clear. What does that mean? Does it, I say, do as I say or not as I do?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians decided that balancing the budget at all costs was the wrong decision. Focusing on how we could improve the economy over the long term is exactly what we're trying to do. We are focusing on how we can make investments in the long term of our country that will make a real and measurable difference in our productive capacity. Most importantly, it will create jobs for Canadians. It will help the middle class. Yesterday was an important day setting out our vision for doing that. We're going to do it in a responsible way that will have a real impact over the long term.
Honourable Member for Musquet-Neigette and Musquat-Basque. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this House, a motion was adopted calling on the government to end discrimination against First Nations children, but there is nothing new in the Minister's economic update to enforce this decision. The only Indigenous economic advisor on the Government's Advisory Council says that the Minister should have a more helpful narrative for children of the First Nations. It's one thing to vote in favour of our motion, but now they have to implement it. When will the Minister roll out the funds for First Nations children?
Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. Obviously, we have been making tremendous progress in supporting First Nations children in this country. We're the first government to step up and accept Jordan's principle, investing more than $382 million immediately in children in First Nations. We were the first government to accept a ruling of the tribunal and move immediately to invest more than $635 million in the First Nations children in this country. We know the system needs to be reformed. We ask all colleagues in this House to work with us and Indigenous government to make that happen.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, Europe has been clear that CETA cannot proceed without changes to investor-state rules to protect national sovereignty. But the Minister has already tabled legislation to implement CETA, in spite of the fact she has provided no answers on compensation for dairy farmers, nothing to address rising drug prices, and no plan to fix rules that leave our environmental laws and local procurement at risk of foreign lawsuits. Will the Minister admit there is more work to be done and commit to removing investor-state provisions from CETA?
Honourable Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question. CETA is clearly in Canada's national interest. It is a progressive trade deal that ensures very high standards for environmental protection, for labour, etc. And it is time, we believe, for all members in this House to rally around it and put partisan politics aside. All 28 member countries in the European Union have supported CETA. It's also supported by all the provinces, including Quebec. The Trade Committee will have a chance to look at CETA, Mr. Speaker, and address certain issues, but for the time being, Philippe Couillard, Premier of Quebec, has called it a historic, modern, and progressive agreement.
For South Surrey White Rock.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minister is taking $15 billion away from communities, money that has already been announced for public transit, green infrastructure, and for rural and northern communities. Mr. Speaker, this is a betrayal. The communities across this country have been waiting and planning for this money to build important infrastructure projects and create much-needed jobs. Mr. Speaker, why are these Liberals creating high-risk schemes that will fail communities and out-of-work Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear. We announced yesterday an historic plan investing in infrastructure. It is an important plan that provides for rural communities with a $2 billion investment in rural communities. It's an historic plan that provides as well a significant amount for a Canada Infrastructure Bank that's going to allow us to do even more with our infrastructure dollars for transformational projects. We've set out something that we know will have a big impact on our economy and an impact on jobs both today and tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Well, Mr. Speaker, according to reports, job creation over the last year was half of what it was over the 5 previous years, and no full-time jobs were created. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have increased the debt, and yesterday the Finance Minister announced he will borrow yet another $32 billion. This is for the same infrastructure plan that resulted in zero job gain. Mr. Speaker, when will this government admit that this is a failed plan and heed the advice of leading economists and stop spending more taxpayers' dollars?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to know that we are moving forward on our plan because we know it's the right thing to do, but we also know that leading economists around the world are looking at what Canada is doing and saying this is absolutely what you should do. With the fiscal situation we have and the opportunity to make investments, we are moving forward because we know it's better for our economy, it's better for Canadians, it'll create jobs. And I can say that when Christine Lagarde, the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, says she hopes that our policies go viral around the world, it's because leading economists recognize that we're doing exactly what we should be doing at this time for our economy.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the problem for the Minister of Finance is not Ms. Lagarde who's going to pay for down the debt, but Canadians. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister said that 950 projects had been accepted for a total of $11 billion, but Infrastructure Canada's database shows 860 projects for $4.2 billion. Now, these numbers don't add up, but here's a number to keep in mind. 1 year of Liberal government, 1 year of overspending, 1 year of deficit, and fewer than 10 projects rolled out to date. Mr. Speaker, when will this government finally create good jobs here in Canada? The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Yesterday was a historic day for Canadian municipalities from coast to coast to coast. We committed to invest more than $180 billion over the next 12 years. And as part of our commitment for Budget 2016, we approved more than 950 projects with a combined investment of $12 billion. And a majority of those projects are underway, helping municipalities buy buses, do the advanced planning work for the next stage of infrastructure, as well as improving water.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Finance announced the creation of a Canadian investment bank. But all we know for now is that there will be an amount of $15 billion that was promised to communities that will be dedicated to this new bank. What people need to see are not new institutions, but people at work. Not money in banks, but money in construction sites. Mr. Speaker, Will the minister finally propose a job creation plan that is realistic, that will put Canadians to work?
The Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, our Canada Infrastructure Bank will help our economy. We will be able to multiply our efforts with more opportunities for projects that will be transformational for our economy. That is our goal. We know that with more investment in infrastructure for the future, we will see jobs now and in the future for Canadian families.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of a national student mobilization, the Liberal government promised that graduates would be able to defer the repayment of their student debt as long as they were earning less than $25,000 a year. But this is not a new announcement, Mr. Speaker. It was recycled from the last budget, and it doesn't actually solve any of the fundamental problems that are getting students into huge debt. Will the government stop this distraction and finally take concrete steps to guarantee access to affordable post-secondary education in Quebec and in Canada?
Secretary to the Minister of Employment.
Well, Mr. Speaker, yesterday was a great day for Canadian students. As yesterday, the loan repayment Act came into being, and now Canadian students don't have to start their repayment until they have employment that pays over $25,000 annually. This is over and above the $1.5 billion that this government has invested in student grants. We have increased the level of student grants for low-income Canadians by 50%. The lowest income Canadians are now eligible for a cap of $3,000, up from $2,000. We're listening to students, and we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Churchill, Keewatin-Okaski.
Mr. Speaker, today's students on the Hill and across the country are speaking out for a generation that is burdened by debt and facing rising rates of unemployment. They are putting forward bold solutions in the face of rising precarious work, ones that we've heard on our national tour across the country. So instead of placating young people and telling them to accept the unacceptable, will the Prime Minister, the Minister of Youth, listen to students' solutions and stand up and show leadership for the millennial generation?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we understand fully that it's important to offer young Canadians that opportunity for first job. We've doubled the amount of money for the youth employment and our youth employment strategy, double the number of summer jobs for young Canadians. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the students' organizations, those that I've met with I was just in Mount St. Vincent, I was in Cape Breton University. Ray Karam, he's the president of the student union at CBU, his comment about our investment in students, I'm excited, and I know the students will be happy as well. It's a win for all students. This government knows the needs of students, and we're here to support them.
Member for Pickering-Uxbridge.
Mr. Speaker, today the Minister of Finance appeared before Finance Committee to answer questions on the fall economic statement, which he delivered in the House of Commons yesterday. It was the first time such a statement has been given to Parliament in almost 10 years. Can the Minister explain how our government's plan will help middle-class families, and what's the next steps in order to grow the economy sustainably?
Honourable Minister.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, from Pickering-Uxbridge for her question. A year ago, Canadians asked this government to put the middle class first. And, that's exactly what we've done by supporting Canadians through our first budget, where we put in place measures that are really helping families, by moving forward in our economic statement yesterday to talk about how we're going to actually make a long-term difference through better jobs, better long-paying jobs for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, this is part of a plan. We will continue to work on behalf of middle-class families. We will move forward in Budget 2017 to make measurable impact.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, we've just witnessed the annual ritual of some of the world's worst human rights abusers elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council. The good news is Russia has been denied the seat it so long took for granted. But China, Saudi Arabia, and Cuba will be seated. Now, Mr. Speaker, the vote, as usual, was secret. But the vote is not the minister's. It belongs to all Canadians. Will the minister tell Canadians how Canada voted on these four notorious human rights abusing nations?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, I'm proud to say that we seek to maximize membership on this Council with countries that have strong human rights records at home and abroad. And that this Council, as everywhere, will make the promotion of universal human rights, as we have done over the last year, with a very impressive result. Let me to start, Mr. Speaker. This government asks for clemency in all cases of Canadians facing execution abroad. We will adhere to the optional protocol to the Conventions Against Torture of the United Nations, and a lot of more.
Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, some weeks ago, former Liberal Justice Minister and Human Rights Champion Irwin Cotler, among others, called on the minister to defy the UN's secretive and hypocritical tradition and make Canada's vote public. The minister refused, as he did again today. Now, we recognize the Liberals' willingness to mute Canada's principled voice in their shameless quest for a Security Council seat. But will the minister today reconsider, demonstrate leadership on the human rights file, and tell Canadians how Canada voted on Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and Cuba?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank my colleague to give me the opportunity to continue the impressive record we have about the promotion of human rights over the last year. We created the Office of the Human Rights, Freedoms and Inclusion. We are supporting the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights with a contribution of $15 million in new base funding. Canada has been elected to the Commission of the Status of Women of the United Nations. Human rights, freedoms and inclusion are now among the fundamental objectives of all Canadian heads of mission. We have tabled new legislation to guarantee and protect the legal rights and so on.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, I think the minister is too ashamed to admit how he voted at the UN. Yesterday, we learned the defense minister is making another trip to Africa. It seems the Liberals are hell-bent on sending 600 Canadian troops into harm's way. Before the minister sends our troops anywhere, he should explain to Canadians what interest we have in sending troops to Mali, where 100 peacekeepers have already been killed. Will the Prime Minister admit that sending troops to Mali serves no Canadian interest than his own vain campaign to win himself a seat at the UN Security Council?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, last summer I had the opportunity to travel in 5 different countries in Africa, where I got to take Premier Canadians to understand the conflicts within that nation. Canada has a responsible part to play in this world in conflict prevention and conflict reduction. This is another trip that I'll be taking into Africa to learn more and work with my colleagues on a whole of government approach to peace operations, which I look forward to sharing with Canadians and all parliamentarians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, once again, the Minister is getting ready to visit Mali, where the government is preparing to send our soldiers. As the former commander of a regiment, I understand the risks associated with different missions. This year alone, I would remind everyone that 32 Blue Berets lost their lives to this mission, bringing the total number to 100. If the minister discovers that the mission is too dangerous for our troops and isn't in our national interest, will he stand up to the Prime Minister?
The Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, as we look at all aspects of conflict in Africa, we will be selecting a place where Canada can play a meaningful contribution. Our Canadian Armed Forces have participated on UN peacekeeping operations around the world, and we have been recognized for it. Canada has a role to play in conflict reduction and conflict prevention, and we have a responsibility to the world to be a responsible partner. And we will bring a whole-of-government approach to this, in which I look forward to sharing with all parliamentarians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, last winter, thousands of Canadians were unable to get their mail because the locks on their mailboxes were frozen shut. Because instead of buying mailboxes made in Saint-Jean-Port-Joli, Canada Post bought them in Kansas. It's strange. The Liberals promised the return of home mail delivery, but I haven't heard any member across the way defend that idea in a very long time. The government wants to spend billions to privatize our infrastructure, so why won't they force a crown corporation to buy products that are made in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for the question. The reality is that Canada Post is a Crown corporation. They make decisions about where they buy their products. What we are doing is working very closely to make sure that Canadians get the services they need and deserve. That's what we're doing with the review of Canada Post, which we committed to do, and I'm looking forward to getting the report from both the task force and the parliamentary committee that is presently under review.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Last September, the Prime Minister told the world that the fight against AIDS was a priority. But at the same time, the Public Health Agency of Canada has cut its funding to Dopamine, an organization that fights against HIV and hepatitis C among drug users in Hochelaga. With unknown criteria, poorly translated documents, and botched decisions, the process around the Community Initiative Fund, which was intended to solve this problem, is a real fiasco. Will the minister sit down with Quebec groups to find a solution to this catastrophic situation?
Minister de la Santé.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
For raising this issue, the matter of sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections is a very serious one, and I'm working actively with the Public Health Agency of Canada to update our approach to these conditions, including hepatitis C and HIV. We will be working with communities to make sure that they have access to the resources that they need, and we look forward to an approach that will make sure Canadians are healthy into the future.
Honourable Member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Mr. Speaker, Premier Wall penned a letter to the Minister of Public Safety urging him to speak up for the people he's supposed to represent. The Liberal carbon tax scheme will cost Saskatchewan jobs, yet this minister from Wascana continues to support this tax on Saskatchewan families. Shame. Mr. Speaker, when will the Minister of Public Safety remember that he was elected to represent the people of Saskatchewan and Ottawa rather than forcing an Ottawa knows best scheme on the families of Saskatchewan?
Yes. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on the substance of the federal proposal, it provides the province with complete control over program design and also all the revenues. That would enable Saskatchewan to eliminate its personal income tax or its property tax or a whole variety of other taxes. It makes carbon capture and sequestration far more competitive, and it makes a stronger case for building a pipeline. It also supports science in water, food, and CCS. It provides funding for a power grid announced just yesterday and major water development projects to control flooding and expand irrigation. It's a good plan.
The Honourable Member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek. Order.
Mr. Speaker, Premier Wall has written a letter to the Minister of Public Safety asking him to start defending his constituents instead of job-killing Liberal policies. But Saskatchewan's lone Liberal MP has gone into hiding. I'd like to believe that the member for Wascana wants to do the right thing and defend his province. So why won't he? When will the Minister of Public Safety stand in his place and start defending the interests of our province and all Saskatchewanians?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've been doing that with considerable success since 1974. This summer, I had the privilege of announcing more than $500 million in federal investments in science, infrastructure, and job creation in Saskatchewan, as well as housing and a vast array of social programs. And, Mr. Speaker, I will continue to fight every inch of the way for the best results for Saskatchewan.
The Honourable Member for Cypress. Order. The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here's the history of the member from Wascana. As Agriculture Minister, he stripped the 100-year-old crow rate advantage from Western Canadian farmers. As Minister, he coordinated the jailing of farmers just for trying to sell their own grain. Now he stands against prairie farmers by supporting a federally imposed Liberal carbon tax that will drive up the price of everything, fuel, fertilizers, and equipment, making our farmers uncompetitive. For once, will he stand up and put Saskatchewan farmers and farm families ahead of his own Ottawa political ambitions?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the consequences of climate change, like droughts and fires and storms and floods, impose billions of dollars in costs and losses on provinces like Saskatchewan and municipalities. As I said earlier, the Government of Canada has an investment plan to expand the economy of Saskatchewan. Over $500 million has already been announced. And we're also prepared to invest in science like carbon capture and sequestration, which Premier Wall has advocated, and the Global Food Centre in Saskatoon, and the major water facility at the University of Saskatchewan, and smart power grids, and flood prevention. Mr. Speaker.
Member for Richmond. Member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that the economy and the environment go hand in hand, and that any credible plan to reducing our production of greenhouse gases must include carbon pricing. In the federal sustainable energy, the government announced its intention to create a low-carbon government. Can the minister update the House as to the government's plan to do its part in tackling climate change? Thank you.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank the member from Richmond Hill for his work on this file. Today, I am proud to announce that the Government of Canada will be reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. We are creating a Centre for Greening of Government at Treasury Board that will track emissions, coordinate efforts across government, and drive results. Le gouvernement doit et on va.
The government will do its part to develop a clean and sustainable economy that creates good jobs while reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have slashed HIV/AIDS funding without giving a single organization advance notice. These organizations play an important role in reducing the transmission of HIV/AIDS, and they provide support to the thousands, Mr. Speaker, literally thousands of Canadians living with this illness. Our previous Conservative government invested in Canadian programs. The current Liberal government is cutting them out. Mr. Speaker, why aren't Canadian tax dollars going to Canadian AIDS organizations before going to other countries?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for raising this issue in the House. The matter of HIV is something that I have been interested in and advocating for over 30 years. It is an issue that was not appropriately addressed in the past decade. In fact, there has been little attention paid to this matter at the federal level for some time. We are interested in a new approach to sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections, including HIV, hepatitis C. We are looking for ways to invest in good organizations, and we will continue to provide the support that Canadians need.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents in Kootenay, Columbia, who have lost their jobs, will be facing a month-long interruption in receiving their employment insurance. This is because government was not prepared to process the number of applicants that need assistance when they extended benefits for my region, which has been hit by the economic downturn. These constituents will now go without income for 4 weeks. What is this government doing to address the backlog, and what advice does the minister have for the people in my riding who will go a month without much-needed income?
Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Je suis reconnaissant à mon collègue de...
I thank my colleague for raising this question. In Budget 2016, we laid out important measures to improve the flexibility and inclusiveness of EI benefits. We also tried to improve the quality of services provided by the government, and I look forward to working with members of this House to ensure that these services are as useful and relevant as possible for all unemployed persons. The Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, today many of our colleagues had the chance to meet with Canada's Olympic and Paralympic athletes and trainers from the Rio Games. But we're not the only ones to have had that opportunity. At events in Gatineau and Ottawa, several students had the opportunity to meet them as well. Can the minister tell us about the importance of these athletes for young people?
The
Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for Vimy for her question. On behalf of all parliamentarians, I want to congratulate our athletes from Rio and highlight the importance of the Games for our young people. Nearly 1,000 students were with our athletes this morning. They inspire our students to dream, to become more athletic, more active, and to aim for the podium.
Welcome our athletes later on and give them the hero's welcome they deserve in this house for representing Canada on behalf of all Canadians. I thank them for their wonderful, their wonderful results in Rio this summer. Thank you.
Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, the minister's excuses to close the Vegreville Processing Centre and move it to a Liberal city riding are nonsense. He claimed there's a strong business case, cited efficiencies, and said the union agrees. But Prairie PSAC reps say, quote, "This has nothing to do with workload or the capacity of these employees to deliver service. The reason given by department heads were trivial." They confirmed, senior officials said, no cost analysis was done. They call for a reversal of this edict. So how can Vegreville believe anything this minister says?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, we are working with the stakeholders to ease the transition. My staff has had a good conversation with the mayor. I would be happy to meet the member at any time. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that there is a net increase in jobs in Alberta, that there is a strong case for this, and that we have a responsibility to spend taxpayers' money wisely and to improve the efficiency of the Immigration Department, to improve efficiency and reduce processing times.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here's a scenario. If the CETA agreement was enforced and the controversial Ajax mine in Kamloops, British Columbia, gets turned down by the British Columbia government, the Polish mining company would have the right to bring an arbitration case against Canada. On the other hand, were a Canadian company to have a grievance with Poland, it's not at all clear they could sue because Wallonia has won opt-out provisions for every European nation. Will the Prime Minister commit that this Parliament will have adequate time to research, study, and understand CETA before we vote?
Will Parliament, the Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question as well as bringing her unique voice to this House. CETA is clearly in Canada's national interest, Mr. Speaker, and it is time for all of us to rally around it. On top of delivering tangible growth to our economy and opportunities for the middle class, CETA will provide a strong foundation for Canada and the EU to demonstrate leadership on what is truly a progressive accord, a green accord, a health accord, a labour accord, and also enshrines the right to regulate. The ICS provisions, Mr. Speaker, I suspect is something that the Trade Committee will look at over the upcoming weeks, and we will work with the committee and with our
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, 11th Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth.
Pursuant to order of October 26th, the House will now resolve into Committee of the Whole in order to admit the athletes from the Olympics and Paralympics.
Hello?
Order. Canadians are rightly proud of our athletes. Like us, they are appreciative of the years of training and sacrifice and the determination it takes to become a world-class athlete.
Today is an opportunity to recognize the coaches, the administrators, and the Canadian Olympic and Paralympic committees for their support, along with recognizing our athletes. As we are welcoming a very large group of people into a restricted space, I would ask members not to impede the athletes' parade through the chamber. I understand there's agreement among all parties to have the names of the Olympic and Paralympic athletes who are with us today printed in the debates. You're all welcome to join our guest at a reception immediately following in room 237C. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome onto the floor of the chamber many of the athletes who competed at this year's Olympic and Paralympic Summer Games in Rio. committee will rise, and I will leave the chair. Tabling of documents, the Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 32.2, I have the honour to table in both official languages the Veterans Ombudsman's Annual Report 2015-2016. Thank you.
Order. Allowed. Order. Tabling of documents, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36(8), I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to 56 petitions.
Introduction of government bills, statements by ministers, reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to present in both official languages the following report of the Standing